Intellectual property in Ghana is the laws are okay, because for a country to protect intellectual property, first of all, there should be an institution, government institution like the Copyright and the Registrar General's Office to focus on intellectual property. Then there should be also a system, a court, where if you want redress, you go to. And in Ghana we have the commercial court, which is also for intellectual property issues.
A copyright holder has several exclusive economic rights, making it possible to control how people's works are used commercially. There is a specific criterion a work must meet in order to be protected. For example, the work must be original and must already be fixed in a definite medium of expression. No one is allowed to reproduce the work in any form without the originator's permission.
We have to also remember that intellectual property are private rights. You can also enforce your right yourself. So since the institutions are there, for instance, if you write a book and you find out later that I'm pirating the book, selling it to people, you can take me on. First of all, decide to launch a complaint with the Copyright Office, which in the law we have an option where we have mediation. If you report that person, we can decide to invite the two parties, try to mediate to solve it amicable. But if it is not able to solve here, you can proceed to court.
Renting, selling or distribution without permission is also prohibited. A work copyrighted cannot be rearranged, retranslated, adapted or altered without the copyright holder's authorization.
For every literary work that exists in this world, it takes somebody to sit down, to use his or her intellect to create. You can imagine the frustrations and sleepless nights that writers have to go through before they come out with their scripts, and this will have to be facilitated by a heavy investment from the publisher before the work will come out for public consumption. So under the law, authors and publishers are granted exclusive right to reproduce their own work in any manner and any form and even any quantity.
A strong copyright regime is crucial in the development of any created work. However, copyright infringements are prevalent in the country, denying creators and right owners from fully enjoying their labor and investments. At the universities, copies of books are photocopied with impunity without realizing the dangers involved in the act.
Personally, I'm very careful with that because I'm very particular about my assignment. I want to make sure I submit the right thing, and I take my time in doing my research. So I wouldn't put anybody's intellectual property and make it my right. I'll have to read through and then take what I'll have to take from it. If it means quoting, I'll quote if necessary. But some students as well, those who really rush through their work, don't do enough research, have to do last date submission of assignment. You realize when they don't have enough time, they just lift and then put there, not recognizing somebody's intellectual property. Because I believe as a student, as an intellectual, you'll be mindful whose work you take. Because if someone should also use your work without crediting, you'll be hurt.
I'm not that mindful when it comes to photocopying somebody's work, but you know, I've seen an instances or witnessed an instances where students photocopy a whole chapter of that book without necessarily leaving the part where it's inscribed, you know, do not photocopy or something, or part of this book or whole. But you know, it's common among students, and I think it's something that we shouldn't encourage.
Mechanisms in schools to check the act are rarely known.
We have what we call the reprograph, where students are allowed a certain minimum use of people where they don't even pay anything.
Right, okay, so we're talking about copyrights in the chamber this morning, and like I said earlier, my guest is Dorothy Habada, and she is a state attorney at the Copyright Office. Good morning, Dorothy.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Very well, and you?
Okay, very well, thank you for asking. Okay. Now, when we talk about copyright, what do we mean?
Copyright is the...
About creations, what kind of things are we talking about?
We're talking about creations like books, movies, computer software, artwork, and things like that.
Okay. How does the copyright law work?
That question...
Because you said that it protects... It protects people's works.
Yes.
How does the law work in protecting these works?
Okay. The law has provisions for protecting works of individuals. When a person's work is created, we expect automatically the person has the copyright. That is one mistake that people make. They think registering the work is what gives them copyright, but that's not the case. So
immediately you produce something, it is.
So
why do we have to go through the process of registering anyway?
Beautiful. That's the reason for registration. Actually, is optional. It's not compulsory. In Ghana,
so you don't have to register anything.
You don't have to, because automatically
you can just produce your movie or song or whatever and sit at home and you're fine.
Beautiful. But the reason for which we encourage registration is that for evidential purposes, in case there's a dispute between, in respect to the work, for registration purposes, for evidential purposes, to keep a record of registered works in Ghana, right. And then
so just for record keeping, basically.
Just kind of, yes.
When you talk about for evidential purposes, such as for issues of disputes, what kind of disputes could arise out of? Maybe somebody else does the same thing, produces the same thing.
Yes, when a person's work is duplicated without the person's consent or copied substantially without the owner's consent, that usually causes
disputes.
Right.
I've also heard that ideas cannot be registered when it comes to copyright.
Yes.
Now you just mentioned that somebody can also copy your work or duplicate your work. How do you know that two people didn't get the same idea?
Well, that's why we say ideas are not registrable. Why? Because what copyright does protect is the physical expression of your own idea. In other words, two people can have...
What you've conceived, you must actually produce in order to be able to register. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, basically, that's what I'm trying to say. But what I'm saying is two people may have the same idea, but you see, in expressing it, they may express it differently.
Because two people can't think of the same thing.
Exact things. Yes. They may have the same ideas, but their method of expression may be different. So every individual's method of protection is actually protected. Expression rather is actually protected. In other words, if we put a diagram of a table or a boy playing football, we say a class draw a boy playing football. Definitely we're looking at the same thing, but because of our seating arrangements or view of the person playing the ball, we may have different
ways of expressing
that diagram.
Okay.
So what we're saying in copyright is that everybody's expression of that same idea is actually registrable in the name of that individual.
Right. Now, who is qualified to get their work protected?
Any creator. Anybody who creates anything enjoys copyright of that thing.
So, like we mentioned earlier, musicians, producers of movies, TV shows, authors, writers,
definitely,
things like that.
Definitely.
Okay. What rights does a copyright owner have?
A copyright owner has basically two rights. One, the moral rights. The moral rights, which we refer to as the paternal right, the right to prevent anybody from using the work in a way that he does not intend for it to, and the right to be recognized as the creator of that work whenever it is used.
Okay.
Then the second right, we have the economic right, which actually is the right for the person to enjoy economic benefit from his creation. So we have two basic rights. Now, the thing about the rights is that the moral rights exist in perpetuity. In other words, it can never be transferred. But the economic right can be transferred. You could transfer your economic right, but even when that right is transferred, you still have the moral right in it. In other words, whoever it is you transfer it to cannot use it in a way that you do not intend for it to be used. In other words, if you transfer that right and the work is used in a way that you do not intend, you can actually go to that person and say, no, you can't use it in that way. So you have to
specify or state the way in which you want the work to be used when you transfer it?
Possibly, yes.
I see.
Yes.
Can you sell your rights?
Yes, your economic rights, yes, you can.
I see.
Not the moral rights.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's talk about the Copyright Office here in Ghana. What is your role? What do you do?
Copyright in Ghana actually is set up to execute, or what will I say, manage the right of copyright owners. In other words, to protect the right of copyright holders in Ghana. We are there to protect your rights. In other words, that's why we encourage registration, so that we can have a record of the works in Ghana. Not everybody does.
But a lot of time we hear, especially the musicians, talking about how they don't have copyrights and they're not getting paid for their works and this and that. What do they mean? If there's a copyright office in Ghana and they're complaining about them not having copyrights, what is the problem? What's the issue here?
It's a problem or an issue of misunderstanding of the concept in itself. Right. Because you can't say you don't have.
You've heard the musicians say
you cannot say you do not have copyright when you have created something. It is automatic. Once you create, you have that right. Whether or not you register, it does not take that right away from you. So whoever it is that creates a work has the right in that work.
So when they talk like that, is it that they just don't understand what they're saying, or
basically yes, and it's possible also that they do not understand the mechanics of it, because even though we have a copyright office, there are also collecting societies who collect the right of usage. You see, the royalties on behalf of the creators, and distribute those royalties to them.
Okay.
In other words, they have to assign their rights to those organizations for the organizations to actually act on their behalf, to collect those royalties on their behalf and distribute to them. So where they have not done this, then even the collecting societies are hamstrung, because if you do not give me your rights, I can't administer it for you.
Right, but does the law work? Does it protect them enough, the law we have in Ghana on copyright?
Well, as far as I know, yes. Because the laws are in place, and if you avail yourself for the law to help you, it will help you.
Now, you're a state attorney. Do you see a lot of these cases? Do we have a lot of copyright issues or cases coming up?
Quite a number. We have issues.
Can you give us some examples? What kind of cases do you see?
Usually musicians and producers in dispute
over who owns the work.
Not really over who owns the work, but maybe you have produced me, and maybe issues of usually music in the music industry, is mostly in the music industry, but then there are also some in the literary industry, like one I handled myself, of a poetry book created by two authors. One of them, the two authors created the work, and a lecturer in the a secondary school in Kumasi was using the work for his lectures, but I think he was duplicating copies for the students without the knowledge of the authors. So they picked that up, and then they reported it to the office.
That brings me to my next question. In fact, we saw that in the video that Godfrey did, the story about how students we produce or we photocopy. When I was in school, I'm sure I did it. We photocopy works, people's works, and study with it and all of that. Are we breaking some laws by doing that? Because I know it happens in a lot of institutions where people photocopy a lot of works to study with, books and stuff like that.
Yes. Actually, copyright actually has permitted uses. So that if you want to use somebody's work and you make a copy for yourself, to use by yourself, you haven't broken any law. But in a case where you duplicate it in mass quantity, then you have actually violated the right of the person, because you only have right to one copy
for yourself. So the lecturers and other students who photocopy and sell and give out, they're
actually breaking laws.
Wow.
Actually.
Who is permitted to transfer a right?
The right owner.
Only? Nobody else?
Nobody else.
I see. What is the duration of a copyright holder?
Duration of a copyright subsists for the lifetime of the right owner,
so for as long as
70 years afterwards. In other words, when you live, you die. 70 years after, you still enjoy that right. In other words, you can actually transfer your rights. You can actually, like a will, like your property. It's a property, so you can actually will it to people.
Right. Yes. Now we've talked about the how much of someone's work you can reproduce. That's just one copy for yourself, and not anymore.
Breaking any laws.
Are there any works that are not protected by copyright at all? You've said anything that you produce is protected. Is there anything that is
not protected? Well, intellectual property is broad. So there are some things, some people come to us with inventions and we advise them to appropriately. Even though it is intellectual property, it's not copyright that deals with that. So we encourage them to go, it could either be a trademark, a patent, or a service mark or whatever it is, all intellectual property, but copyright actually deals with the creative expressions of people. In other words, if you have an idea and you have expressed it in a particular way, that's what copyright protects.
Now finally, what is the punishment that's meted out to someone who duplicates another's work?
Penalties for copyright offenses actually is that when you violate somebody's copyright, you are liable to a penalty of 1,000 penalty units and a minimum of 500.
What does that mean to the latest 1,000 penalty units?
A penalty unit is equivalent to 120 Ghana cedis now.
120 Ghana cedis.
Yes.
Okay.
So that the punishment for violating somebody's copyright could be as much as 1,000 penalty units or a minimum of 1,500 penalty units or a minimum of 500 penalty units, or 3 years imprisonment, or both.
Wow, that's very serious. Okay, so violation of copyright laws is a serious offense.
It is.
Hopefully you'll be following this discussion and you will desist from reproducing other people's work. Right, this has been the Chamber, and we've been talking about copyright laws right here in Ghana, and my guest has been Dorothy Habada, who is a state attorney at the Copyright Office. Hope you've enjoyed this discussion. Thank you very much once again for your time this morning.